welcome everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Ichabod's House. We are on season 2, episode 3. We are on part 2 of Indrid Cold. Really interesting stuff. But before we get to that, we have some business to take care of. I do have a question for you first, before we start.
Sure.
What do you think of when you hear the phrase "rode hard and put up wet"?
I think of a cigarette hag.
What do you think literally that... The reason is, because I was talking with some of my friends at work, who we all know are teachers, and who should be innocent, and apparently are not. One of them said that in what we were talking about, and one of them started laughing and said, when I think of that, I think of the literal translation. I'm thinking of an old dusty horse in a ghost town who was exhausted.
No, it's sex. I always think of a cigarette hag.
So apparently I'm the only one naive one in this relationship. All right. Okay, that's all I had. I just had to ask about that. Okay, so we have Google and Beyond, Rings of Saturn. Will you tell us about that?
So last week we were talking about the rings of Saturn being made up of rainbows. If you will recall, when Woody Derenberger visited Saturn, he discovered it was shaped like a giant bowl, and everybody lived in the bottom in a valley. And the edges of Saturn were crusted in ice, and the rings of Saturn were not debris or anything. They were rainbows. So I thought, well, I need to Google and Beyond that shit, because what are the rings of Saturn made of? So It turns out the rings of Saturn are made of bits of comets, asteroids, and moons, and they're all coated in chunks of ice, and there's a bunch of dust up there. No rainbows.
No rainbows.
No rainbows. Exactly. Exactly. Then we also had a couple of other things. We couldn't remember the name of the gentleman who wrote the Falk Monster book, and that was Lyle Blackburn. And we also couldn't recall the name of the Pentagon
Space Force group.
Space Force group. So I'll let you explain what that one was.
That is Airborne Object Identification and Management Synchronization Group.
There you go. So
there you go. That's what that is. Not Space Force.
Color us educated.
For sure. Okay, so now Ichabod's nose picks. What do you got?
New podcast, not new to me, I have discovered, called The Midnight Library. It is really well done. It kind of talks about obscure subjects. They did an episode on the catacombs under Paris. They've done an episode of the Rowan tree, what that is. They've done episodes on ghosts. It's just kind of a fringy, and it's done very well as a librarian telling a story to a group of listeners in her library. I give it 5 stars for sure.
Okay. I have 2. One is that the new season of Space Force came out on Netflix, and I watched that, and it's just as fun and funny as ever. And then I stumbled upon a new book called Fate's Hands. It's a werewolf werebear book.
Oh, dear.
It is so trashy and good, and you're just going to love it. Well, you probably won't read it, but it's really fun. I love it. It's my what do they call that? Sinful pleasure? Guilty pleasure. We talked about that earlier. Guilty pleasure. That's what it is. I love it now.
All right. Well, I will make sure to put links to all of that on our website. So,
I thought you'd be so impressed, because we've talked about the werebears for so long. I'm taking one for the team here, Jen, by reading it.
What we need to know from you is, we had also talked about how they wipe their butts. So if you find any information out, do they scoot across the forest floor? Does the woman have to trim off the dingleberries, as there are a pair of scissors always carried with her for such an emergency?
I can answer that. There is no need, because they aren't in their animal form long enough to defecate.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And when they, bow chicka wow wow, they're in their human form. Unless they go to a safe space in their mind with their were counterpart And then their wear counterparts do it, and then they do it, but they still stay human. And then, because it's never a human-animal interaction. You're either both human or you're both animal. These are important things to know, Jen. And then there's no dingleberries to worry about.
Okay.
I thought you'd be way more excited about this, and you're not.
I'm excited on the inside.
All right, let's go to Lanulos.
All right. Well, when we left you guys last week, Woody had boarded a ship and was once again bound for Lanulos. But this time, he was vaccinated and bathed in an antiseptic shower so he could mix with the people on Indrid's home planet.
As soon as they landed, Indrid, Carl, Ardo, and Woody headed straight to Indrid's home. There was no debriefing at the Space Command Center. There was no catching a cab from the airport. There was no passing through customs. There was no mandatory quarantine for 30 days. You know, things one might anticipate would occur if landing on a foreign planet. For sure. Earth requires passports to travel just country to country, but not Lanulos. All systems were go once Woody landed.
Indrid's house was made of brick, plain old ordinary brick. The east side was made of glass, which allowed the morning sun to shine through. Long curtains were pulled across the windows at night so that no one could see inside. Indrid's children were there: Conrad, age 12, and Connor, age 10. Indrid and Kimmy had also recently welcomed a little girl who was now 5 months old.
Aw, congratulations to them. Once all the pleasantries were out of the way, Woody was given a grand tour. The living room was furnished much like one would see on Earth. No mention is made of a television set in Woody's book, nor is there any mention of ashtrays. And as we all know, the earthly living room of 1967 had several ashtrays, and the television was the focal point, just as it is today.
The kitchen and dining room were combined in one space. The stove was basically a big metal cube, and the top got hot with just the push of a button. It was the kitchen of tomorrow for 1967, every spacewoman's dream.
Woody was allowed to see the bedrooms, but he does not describe them in his report. He was, however, fascinated by the laundry room. Here, numerous hooks dropped from the ceiling. Dirty clothing was hung on these hooks. Interesting.
Yeah.
Doesn't seem very efficient.
Oh, wait till we get going, because it is. It's the most efficient thing ever. Next, the door was closed and the clothes were sprayed with the detergent solution. The clothes were then left wet for a time before being rinsed, again by being sprayed. Woody reports the laundry was then, quote, left in a room to dry, end quote, but he doesn't clarify if it dried in the same room where it was washed or if there was a secondary drying room. Wherever the clothes were dried, one thing was for sure: they were totally wash and wear. Irons were never needed.
Well, that is something, especially in 1967 when you didn't mix other materials. You just had straight up cotton, which wrinkled terribly. Okay, very interesting. So let's talk about the city life on Lanulos. Remember, cities and towns are referred to as gatherings on Lanulos, and the gathering where Indrid and his family lived was the number 27 gathering. Number 27.
I live in number 27 gathering.
Mm-hmm.
Woody was awed by the sidewalks, which moved in both directions. All a Lanulosian had to do was hop on, and he'd end up wherever he wanted to go. In Woody's case, the first place he wanted to see was a department store.
As Woody walked inside, he was accompanied by Indrid and Kimmy, and the couple each took one of Woody's hands. Woody would look, but he could not touch anything. Nothing from Lanulos must make its way back to Earth.
Yeah, so they are walking through this store, and apparently Indrid and Kimmy are with him, and they each have a hold of his hand, like he's a toddler or something, walking through Dillard's.
Yeah.
Woody took a tour of the appliance department, but it was the toy section that really caught his eye. He spied lots of cool games that looked interesting, but he couldn't understand the rules due to the instructions being in Lanulesian. One has to wonder where Indrid ever learned to speak English. And that was just an aside I put in there because I started to think, who taught this guy English? You know? How long had he been coming to Earth? I have so many questions.
I know, and I don't I think that for gatherings that communicate via the mind, you wouldn't really need written instructions. I'm sure there's a much more efficient way to deliver said instructions. I don't know. I just think that's silly, but whatever.
Whatever.
By the time the small group left the department store, the streets were pretty busy, just all hustle and bustle, and folks were staring at the slightly overweight earthling in their midst, not so much because he was overweight, but because he was wearing clothes in the middle of the warm season.
That's right. Everyone on Lanulos, even today, is a nudist, unless it's the cold season. So that super cool laundry room we were talking about, that's right, only gets used during the cold months.
People weren't too comfortable seeing this guy walking around with clothes on. Thankfully, Indrid was able to explain that this Earthman wasn't used to nudity and it was okay. Really. After that, everyone was relieved and was able to shake his hand.
Even with all of Indrid's reassurances, the folks on Lanulos were worried. What the hell was with the clothes? And so, Carl Ardo, who had apparently replaced Kimmy at some point on this outing, took Woody to a public restroom so he could disrobe.
They're going to probe him. You know they're going to probe him. That is coming. Now they have his clothes off. They're going to probe him. It's coming. I just know it. And I know you're wondering, why would he need privacy to take off all his clothes? Seems counterintuitive, for sure. And this is a good place to legit or bullshit. What do we think about the space kids, Connor and Conrad? Well, first of all, you shorten both those to Connie. How can you keep them apart? I don't know. And how do people manage to carry their space car keys and wallets without pockets? Well, they have fanny packs. And where do they keep everything? In a fanny pack. That's my guess. What do you think?
I'm imagining seeing the attorneys on Lanulos walking around naked but carrying a briefcase. I'm imagining women walking around naked but carrying a shoulder bag. I'm just
That's what they do on
myself,
Naked and Afraid. On Naked and Afraid, they have a satchel that they wear kind of diagonally, covers their boobies up.
Okay.
Or one
See,
I guess. It's like Michael Jackson.
I have limited experience with nudists, so I don't know. I think it's interesting that they could just land on the planet and just go wherever they wanted. Just get off the plane, not walk through. I mean, if you think about even the airport here, if I were to take an airplane from Omaha to Chicago, I'd still have to walk all the way through the airport, grab a cab to get to wherever I'm going. But on Lanulos, it just seems like, hey, we're just going to park our spaceship in the backyard and...
Well, yeah, they're a highly futuristic technological society.
It just makes no sense to me.
I get that. It just must not be that big of a production like it is here, where we have to have a big countdown and everything.
I guess not.
They just can zoom in. It's like the Jetsons. That's what I'm imagining. It's like the Jetsons, where they just kind of zoom in and they have air traffic and all that.
If this would be like the Jetsons, if the Jetsons were nudists, I guess.
Right, and isn't this the right time frame? Weren't the Jetsons in the 60s? Mm-hmm. Things that make you go, Jen. Things that make you go,
Yep. I have to say bullshit. This is all just seeming a little too for me.
Mm-hmm.
To imagine or suppose that everything on Lanulos has evolved and developed exactly the same as it is on Earth. We know that even from an Earth standpoint, that's not possible, right? For example, I give you Australia as a place where there's a lot of bizarre animals that evolve differently from other continents. So I'm imagining that if you were in a different galaxy altogether, your primary life form, humanistic life form or whatever, might develop slightly differently than what Earth's would. And they've even got names like Kimmy and Conrad and Connor and Daryl. Let's not forget Daryl. I'm just saying.
No, I agree
Bullshit.
with you 100%. Yeah, I think, and I really wonder what they gave to Woody, because as you said, you don't think that he is lying. You think that he experienced this in one form or another, but he believes all of this is true. So I'm wondering if they gave him any psychedelics to influence his belief.
I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, in any regard, I'm sure they had fanny packs to keep their stuff.
Well, that's a relief for me, because I was wondering where do you tuck that wallet? Women always carry gum and mints and tissues. They're going to need something.
Right.
And if if they don't have at least a pocket.
I mean, yeah,
anyway.
If you're a grandma, you're always stuffing the Kleenex up your sleeve. And if you don't have any sleeves, you don't have any Kleenex.
Right.
I agree.
Maybe just tuck it under your breast because, if you're not wearing a bra, you've got plenty of places to... I guess maybe that's it. You just walk around with an old woman whose boobs hang down over her belly, and you just say, here, Granny.
I had a lot of shit in there.
Hold my wallet. Lift up the left one.
If I don't have my Victoria's Secret bra on, if I don't have my armor on right here, then I could hold a lot of stuff under there. Under that.
Right. Yeah, I guess you could.
I could be pulling shit out for days. Pens, gun wrappers, all stuff.
Exactly. All right.
Yeah,
well,
for sure.
Once Woody was good and naked, the tour continued. He wandered around town via the moving sidewalks, meeting people, shaking hands, pretty much enjoying himself. At one point, he happened upon a group of people repairing a picket fence. Naked. They were naked.
Okay, so there at the repairing of a picket fence, the people were naked, and Woody met a young naked girl, about 18 or 19 years old, who told him she viewed Earthlings as clannish and always at war with one another. Well, she's not wrong.
Well, Woody was all eager to have a discussion with this girl, so he just propped an elbow on that broken fence and spent a good amount of time chatting with her, telling her all about Earth and its ways. And he told her we aren't always at war, and we love and junk too, like that. And then Indrid was all like, hey, Woody, we got to get going. And he's like, hey, look, this young, nubile, supple teenage girl, mildly voluptuous, has a lot of questions about Earth. And she seems to think we're always at war, and I really need to... I'm an ambassador of Earth right now, so I need to do some ambassadoring. So if you guys could just go away for a while, I'm going to talk with this little space mama for a bit. Are these your parents?
Says, hey, little Philly, what's your sign? That's what he said. What's your sign, baby?
He's like...
things that inquiring Earth minds want to know.
You've got some paint from the fence on your nipple. Let me just get that. Oh, here, let me just lick that off there for
you. For sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, but he couldn't stay long with the naked teen girl because it was time to visit the steel mill, because they have those there too, much like in Flashdance. Sadly, it wasn't a naked steel mill because Sparks and Pubes don't get along. Here the workers wore heavy clothing that protected them from the heat, just like Earth. Interesting.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And what do you suppose these sweaty workers do after work when the whistle blows and their shifts end? Why, they jump into the moat, of course. Surrounding the mill is a giant pool, and they all jump in and have a bath when their work is done, because nothing says clean like bathing in a moat with a bunch of other people.
I'd like to see pictures of this moat. I don't need to see the people in it, just the pictures of the moat. And one of the things Woody really liked was the air car. An air car is a car with no wheels that is propelled over a ditch or a trough by air jets pouring out beneath it. Woody and his companion or companions, we really don't know who he was with at this point, hopped into one of these cars to visit another town.
They left the number 27 gathering and drove on over to the number 28 gathering, which was about 30 Earth miles away. Again, no metric system. Woody doesn't give details of his visit to the number 28 gathering, but on his way back, he was invited by whoever he was with to visit a family from Earth who had settled on Lanulos 40 years earlier.
Oh my gosh, Woody was like, hell yes, I want to meet them, let's go. So he was taken to a little farm. There he met John and Carolyn Peterson from Acapulco, Mexico. And really, is there a more Mexican name than Peterson? I don't think so.
I don't think so.
Wow. Very interesting.
Now, the Petersons were farmers, but at the time of Woody's visit, which is during the warm season, remember, when most farmers should be in the field all day, at least that's how it is on Earth, John and Carolyn were playing Lanulosian tennis. The pair stopped their game so they might visit with Woody, maybe have some space iced tea or something like that.
Were they naked playing tennis? These
I don't
Mexicans
know.
with English names.
I don't know.
Okay. They reported that John was 90 Earth years old, but Woody believed he looked only 50. So we're going to stop here and do some math. If John was 90 Earth years old and had come to Lanulos 40 years prior, that would mean he migrated to Lanulos in 1926, which would put his birth year somewhere around 1876 or so. Interesting.
Right. Yeah. So he was born in 1876, migrated in 1926, didn't age.
Okay.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and legit or bullshit here again. What do we think of the Mexican tennis-playing Petersons? How many earth farmers play tennis during summer months or growing season? And how many earth farmers have tennis courts?
I'm going to say
don't know.
None on that, Alex. None.
I don't know any Petersons from Mexico. I'm not saying that they couldn't live there. But it seems like if your name was Peterson, you'd want to go from, say, Oklahoma to Mexico, where it's more tropical and nice and the weather's good, rather than going from Mexico to Lanulos. And also, who took them to Lanulos? There's a lot. I have so many questions. I'm having a really hard time wrapping my head around this.
I would assume Indrid did. Indrid seems to be an out and about kind of guy. But I would agree that the Petersons must be United or American immigrants into Mexico. They wanted to get in. Everybody else wants to get out, but they wanted to get in. And then they wanted to get out and go to Lanulos.
Apparently.
I would say. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I would have to say kind of bullshit. Simply because of the whole tennis playing farmer thing. Farmers, I mean, it's so much like the United States or Earth. Farmers don't have time in the summer to be playing. It's like the grasshopper and the ant, right?
Yeah. And also, do they not sunburn? I mean, are they susceptible to skin cancer or sunburn or suntan or
right.
I don't know.
Where's the SPF people?
I know. I have so many questions.
All right. Well, it had been quite a day for Woody. Intergalactic travel can really take it out of a guy. He'd walked around naked, visited a space steel mill, met tennis-playing Mexican farmers named Peterson, and met a spaceship crew member named Daryl. And let's not forget about the 18-year-old eye candy.
That's right.
Who was fixing a fence naked.
Exactly. It was quite a day indeed. And so, as it was getting late, Woody was taken back to Earth. There, he climbed into the blue Volkswagen with Clennell and drove back to his truck.
Why wouldn't they just take the hovercraft back?
I don't know. I don't know. That night, as Woody lay in bed, he pondered all that he had seen, and he wasn't sure he would commit to a move there, but the idea was mildly appealing to him.
Okay, so he made it home or home to where he was staying on Lanulos?
Home, to his home on Earth.
So let's go a little deeper into life on Lanulos. If you were to visit today, what would it be like? First of all, everyone there is capable of telepathy, for sure, which negates the need for written instructions. And also, apparently, has mastered the English language. Telepathy cuts down on conflict due to its ability to allow people to see one another's points of view more easily. It enhances empathy, if you will, and it also tells people if you're a creeper or not.
Everyone on Lanulos has a job. During the day, there are specific hours allotted for work, rest, and play. Exercise is also scheduled on a daily basis.
Well, I like that. We need that here in America. I mean, if we're like the most overweight country in the world, government schedules in a little exercise time, a little yard time. Okay, most Lanulosian families have an indoor pool that they might exercise by swimming during the cold season. Oh, they play touch football just like English-speaking Americans. They also play tennis like the Mexican Petersons who had a tennis court and also an indoor pool. But when do they get time to plant? That's what I want to know.
We don't know. It's interesting, though, that they would play touch football, which is only an American sport. Football everywhere else in the world is soccer, and we're really the
who
only
plays
country.
Football naked? I mean, come on. If you're a guy, that's going to be straight up painful. Flapping there between your thighs, that's going to hurt. I can only imagine that would hurt a little bit.
Well, I can't even think playing tennis would have to hurt. All I can think of, too, is if I was playing tennis without a sports bra on,
Oh, man.
I get the desire to be free of clothing and feels okay to be naked, but there are many things that people do that require some degree of support for body parts that, say, react to gravity.
For sure. And inertia.
Anyway.
They react to gravity and inertia. So,
Yes.
yeah, look at us being all physics people.
I know. Other sports include volleyball, ice skating, sledding, skiing, and even ice fishing. They also like archery, but it's illegal to hunt for sport on Lanulos. And as we mentioned previously, they are all nudists except during cold weather or when working in a steel mill.
Okay, I'm glad that you brought that up again because I'm thinking ice skating in the nude. I mean, you're talking about cold burns right there. But I forgot. They're only nudists during the warm season. Okay.
Yeah, because
That makes me feel
otherwise,
better.
if they were to sit on the ice naked, their scrotum would just stick to that ice, and then they.
Oh, can you imagine your nipples sticking? Oh,
Yeah.
if you fell on your face. Oh, that would hurt.
Yeah.
That would hurt really, really bad.
A lot of chafing.
A lot of chafing. All right. So their lifespan is 125 to 150 years. They must be on a Mediterranean diet. So if you're thinking of getting a Lanulosion as a pet, you'll need to keep that in mind. 125 years is a big commitment for sure.
I wonder how they stay thin if they're not walking on the sidewalks, if the sidewalks are just pushing them along.
Do the sidewalks
I
push
guess
them
they-
along? Did I miss that part?
Well, the moving sidewalks. They have moving sidewalks.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Well, because, Jen, they're on a Mediterranean diet.
And
clearly.
they have scheduled mandatory exercise, I
And
guess.
they have scheduled
so.
mandatory exercise every day. Okay. Yeah.
They don't eat chocolate or pork, and I, for one, have to wonder how they would know they don't eat chocolate or pork if those things are available on Lanulos. So, like, do they just say, oh, there's a Hershey's bar, I'm not going to eat it because I don't eat chocolate? I mean, you know what I mean? Why would they even know what chocolate is if it's not? Is there a chocolatier, but they have it there just so they know chocolate's available, but they all refuse to
Maybe
shop
they have
there
them
or
in
go
a
there?
dungeon. Maybe they were
and-
there and they're all in dungeons now because everybody ate so much chocolate they got it. And that is why they have a mandatory exercise time now every day. That's it.
no,
We
I think-
solved the mystery.
The one criminal on Lanulos, his sentence is to make chocolate that no one will ever eat. It's
That
just
is
like,
sad.
that is sad. And
That is sad.
and then so they have pigs and cows. Do you know what I mean? This is
Well,
all.
no. Yeah. Where are the weird kind of animals? Not weird, just different. Why is it pork? Why isn't it something we've never heard of or can even pronounce?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know.
Well,
I agree
yeah.
completely.
Well, yeah. I have a little more to say on this. We'll get there. We'll get there.
Okay. Oh, they drink coffee, but only decaf. Which one questions why? What's the use then, really? And they don't use bleached flour for anything. They do eat beef, which gives us pause because remember last week Woody was taken aboard the mothership and given a meal where he was served something called katuma. Anyway, that word. So what is katuma? Katuma? Is that how you pronounced it?
I don't Katuma. I don't know. I'm not Lanulosian, and I don't use telepathy. So here's how it's going to be, Lanulos. We're going to say that word however Andy wants to say that word.
Yeah.
So you say that word however you want to, Andy.
That's right. Okay. So, what the fuck is Katuma Tatata? Woody said it was more like wild deer, but that can't be because hunting game is illegal. So what the hell is going on, Lanulos?
Yeah. So, okay, they eat beef, but he wasn't served beef on the spaceship. He was served okay. If you recall, he was served something like potatoes, something like green beans, and some kind of meat called katuma, and it tasted like wild deer. So now we're getting this conflicting information that they have farmers. We don't know what they farm. Maybe they farm something like potatoes, something like green beans, but he's saying cows. He is specifically saying beef, but katuma wasn't beef. So what exactly was it? And if they can't hunt deer, then it couldn't have been deer. So do you see where I'm saying there's
soy
all this
burger.
conflicting
Yeah.
stuff? Which makes
like a
me
soy
think,
burger.
what? It's lies. It's lies.
It's lies. You know what the kids would say? That's cap. That's what they'd say. That's cap.
Okay. It's
Yeah.
cap. So
cap.
let's move on to the monetary system. And we want to say right off the bat that what we're about to explain is going to sound exactly like communism, but it's not.
All right. That's right. We know it's not communism because Indrid Cold said it wasn't. And we
right.
believe everything he says. So what is this non-communistic Lanulosian economy like?
Well, first of all, anyone who is able-bodied has to work. But people on Lanulos are not paid according to skill. They are paid based on size of family and family needs. And this isn't communism. It is the free will of the people.
I would make out like a bandit on that planet. I have no skill, and I have a big family. So I would be in the lap of luxury. Thank God for the free will of the people. The religion on Lanulos is Christian and God-fearing. Apparently, Jesus died for their sins too. Wow. When a Lanulosian dies, he goes to live with God. Lanulosians, they're just like us. There are no Hindus, Buddhists, Shintos, Islamists, Jewish people. It's all one big white bread school of thought so everyone can be of one mind. Oh, well, isn't that gross?
Yep. Children go to school until the age of 28. And yes, love of God is taught in schools all throughout a child's education. Once a person graduates, they choose a job.
They should all be doctors by the age of 28. Does that include college? Do we know? I think that should include college, for the love of God. So, for example, you could choose to be a rocket scientist or a cook at McDonald's. Now, wait a minute. Here's a question. Do you have to go to school for the same amount of time if you're going to be a rocket scientist versus a cook at McDonald's?
Apparently, you can just decide what you want to do, and you'll make the same amount of money whether you work as a clerk in a department store or as a surgeon. You're going to make the same amount of money based on your family needs. It's not based on skill or how hard you work. You're just paid the same thing. But that's not communism. We want to make that clear. It's not. It's not.
Okay. Either way you look at it, you're going to be totally prepared. So some things to consider might be, A rocket scientist or a lawyer generally has to carry a briefcase, which looks sort of funny when you're nude, for sure. And B, on the other hand, cooking naked at a grill, oh my God. I wonder if they have little nets for your pubes. Cooking naked at a grill would likely mean you were spattered in the privates by grease on a regular basis. And do they even make hairnets for genitals? Look at that.
I know,
right
great
there.
minds.
Right there. Because
That's what I was thinking too. Do they wrap
hairnets
those
for
rascals?
genitals. I would hope so. Good Lord.
Yes. Couples marry and are completely monogamous. There is no premarital sex. There is birth control.
There's premarital sex. There's absolutely premarital sex. I'm just saying.
There is no premarital sex. There is birth control. And divorce is possible if a couple decides they are not compatible. All right. We're going to stop here and take another legit and bullshit because I can't even. I can't. I think that there are many people in our country who are underpaid. However, I will say that someone who has invested a decade post high school to secondary education and who has worked really hard to acquire a skill set does deserve to be paid higher than someone who works at, the Quickie Mart as a cashier. I think that is fair.
Right.
I guess I'm at bullshit. I mean, this may be legit as a plan on Lanulos if Lanulos is a real place, but I'm saying it's bullshit, and I disagree with it, and I demand better for everyone. I would run for president of Lanulos, of Planet Lanulos, and I would make freedom of religion, and I would make clothing optional in all seasons, and I would bring the sports bra and the athletic supporter and the genital cup for baseball players to Lanulos.
And the pubic
Vote
hair
for me,
nets.
2024. And pubic hair nets.
Right.
Well, we wouldn't need them because people would be able to wear clothing at the grill.
I just can't even. Now, because this is bullshit, I say I agree with you, because basically it's just America in 1967 is what it is. It's the Jetsons with an American flair. In July of 1967, Clennell from planet Cerebus decided he wanted to show Woody his spaceship. Woody, come here. Come over here. I got something to show you. Wanted to show his spaceship, so he dropped in on Woody while he was having lunch at a bus depot one day. "Sup?" Clennell said. And when Woody, probably, just shrugged and probably said, "Not much," Clennell asked him if he wanted to go out to the woods. Woody, this is a red flag. Any guy who comes up and says, "Yo, I want to show you my spaceship, but you got to come out in these thick woods where nobody can hear you scream," you need to run. All right. So, yeah, he wanted to take him out to the woods and see his big spaceship. Maybe take a ride in that bad boy. Oh, my God.
Well, by now, I'm sure our listeners know enough about Woody to know he was totally down for that. So the pair hopped into Clennell's blue VW and drove to the secluded spot where Clennell's Cerebusian spacecraft was parked. The pair climbed aboard, and when all systems were go, the craft took off.
I think I know why he doesn't just drive his spaceship around and park where it needs to be. And then he parks it somewhere off in a secluded location and then gets in his I think he likes driving the VW. I think he enjoys it.
Yes.
I think that's what
I'm
it
sure.
is. Okay, Woody said, "Wow, are we going to Lanulos or Cerebus?" And Clennell said, "Neither." So what? Dude, I said I have something to show you. Calm down. Okay, so what could Woody do except sit back and enjoy the ride as Clennell, in his cut-off shorts, white t-shirt with a cigarette pack rolled up in the sleeve, hair all slicked back like Kannickian grease, lifted off.
Up, up, and away they flew into the sky, but never leaving Earth's atmosphere. And you know what? Hundreds of people saw them, according to Woody. Clennell just had the ship in cruise while they drank beer and looked for chicks, giving the old one-finger wave out the front of the spaceship windows.
Okay, so that just reminded me of one of our recent president's inauguration a few years ago, where he said that millions of people showed up and only like 5 did. So I just think that's really funny.
Yep.
They flew low over factories and farms and oceans. Some people stopped and stared. Some waved. Some ran away in terror. Woody was taken to the Earth place, Tobruk, which I'm sure is a lovely vacation spot, and then they crossed the ocean once again and returned to the U.S.
Yeah, so apparently Tobruk or whatever is a place on Earth. Who knew? I think they're just making shit up now. Maybe it's under the water. Maybe it's near where Atlantis is. Once in the U.S. again, Clennell cruised on over to Mineral Wells to hover over Woody's house. It just so happened that Woody's in-laws were just pulling up. Woody was able to see them get out of their car as his son Charles rushed out to hug them. Sadly, no one on the ground saw the spaceship hovering 400 feet above.
So to cheer Woody up, Clennell said, "I'm going to take you to this place in Italy called Milan." And across the ocean they flew, dropping down on a dirt road a few miles outside of the city. Did they have the VW bug with them?
No.
Okay.
They just dropped the aircraft down and climbed out.
Okay.
There, they blocked the path of an Italian man on a bicycle. Woody and Clennell climbed from the craft and attempted to talk to the man who just stared. This was most likely because Cerebusians, just like Lanulosians, can't speak Italian. They can only speak their planet's language or English, nothing else.
And I'm assuming that Woody did not know Italian either.
No.
Clennell whisked Wood. Oh, was Clennell wearing clothes?
So here's the thing. Whenever you travel intergalactically, you wear clothes. You wear a spacesuit.
Okay, thank goodness. A little culture shock there. Okay, Clennell whisked Woody around Europe in the ship, and when they'd had enough, he cruised on back to the woods where the blue VW was waiting. They climbed down and said goodbye to Clennell, as well as Clennell's girlfriend, Bueldine Voss, who was suddenly, inexplicably, there. Oh, let it go, Bueldine. There you go.
That girl hates her name, too. What's your name? Bueldine. Bueldine! You feed them chickens, Bueldine. Screw you, Mom. I'm going to Earth. I'm getting in Clennell's VW bug. I'm going to this place in Italy called Milan.
There's got to be a country song somewhere. Bueldine. I'm thinking Jolene, but it needs...
Bueldine. 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 Bueldine.
Oh, my goodness.
She has really big hair. Really big space hair.
She's right from Out of America, 1984.
She is. Woody arrived back at his home in Mineral Wells at around 11 o'clock, but he consoled himself with Clennell's parting words. The same sightings that have occurred in Europe this evening would soon occur all over the United States, whatever that means. It seems funny to me that he worded it, he took me to this place in Italy called Milan. There's this place called Europe, and he took me there. I'm kind of past the point where I can even offer any legit because it's...
You can't. You cannot. You cannot. You cannot.
You know, it's let's zip over to Milan, then we're going to come back to the United States, and then we're going to go back over to Europe, and then we're going to come back to the United States, all in the same day.
I'm worn out just reading about it.
It's absurd.
It is absurd. It's absolutely absurd. And whoever is feeding him this stuff did not do very well at lending credibility to it.
No.
That's the problem.
I know. It makes me sad because I believe Woody, in his writing and in his expression of all this and his explanation of all this, he is sincere in what he is saying and explaining. I do not think he is trying to mislead anyone.
Yeah, I know. I get that for sure. All right, so we're going to just say all that's bullshit. Okay, so now we know what Saturn looks like. It's a great big bowl with people living in the bottom, but lots of us wonder about Venus. I know I sure do. Well, in April of 1967, Woody was invited to visit the home of Jethro Cleetaw and his wife Elvane. You may remember Elvane from last week's episode.
Well, Jethro and Elvane Cleetaw drove what in space speak is called a saucer. Not a ship, a saucer. It was 31 feet in diameter. Again, no metric system. And it had a dome on the top. This was just like the ones the little spaceman in the Warner Brothers cartoons used.
Heavy wheels protruded from the base, which were used to either attract or repel gravity. Woody was told that no ship could fly without these special wheels. A red, a blue, and a green light adorned the top. A flashing red light adorned the back, and a revolving one sat on the front.
Inside the saucer, which was featured in Better Space Homes and Gardens, 3 compartments gave it a large, spacious feel. The control room was at the front, and that's where they steered the ship. The kitchen and living room and bunk area came next because space travel should be comfortable at all times. And the 3rd compartment was the super secret power supply room, and Woody was never allowed in there.
Probably for good reason. He's kind of gullible. The saucer flew up to the mothership and locked into place beneath it about 600 Earth miles from the moon. Woody was escorted to the control room on the mothership and watched as they catapulted through space to Venus.
And Venus, I guarantee, is exactly how you've always imagined it. Plains, farmland with fields of plenty, rivers and streams, and lots of trees. There are no mountains on Venus, but there's water aplenty, and the planet supports life.
Well, isn't that just snap diggity? Trees cover the surface of Venus. Their leaves are green, purple, orange, yellow, red, or any other color you could imagine. The people were friendly and all yellow in color, but Woody loved them, and they loved him.
That's all we know about Woody's trip to Venus. One has to wonder why he didn't write more. Clearly, Woody met some amazing space people in his lifetime, and you may be saying to yourself, hey, cool, I'd like to meet some space people too. Well, who wouldn't?
Absolutely. But before you go off on an intergalactic hitchhiking trip, we need to warn you about another race of space people. These are the humanoids.
The story goes like this. One night, Woody was at home, and a man named Jim came a-knocking at his door. Jim wanted to know where he could go and watch for spaceships. So Woody told him.
A few nights later, Jim returned. He said he'd seen spaceships aplenty, but that no one would believe him. So he took his cousin, Darla Sartor, out with him to prove he was seeing some damn ships.
His cousin Darla, who he was dating at the time. As Jim and Darla sat in his car and watched the skies, waiting for the spaceships to arrive, Jim began to hear voices. The voices sounded as if a couple of people were carrying on a conversation. Jim said,
Hey, Darla, do you hear these voices?
I don't hear anything.
Then Jim's face began to tingle. Then someone knocked on the passenger window. Jim and Darla jumped. A man stood outside the window. He walked to the rear of the car and stood with his back to it, hands in his pockets. Jim and Darla looked at each other. After a moment, the man came back and knocked on the passenger window once more, then moved once again to the rear of the car and faced away, hands in his pockets. Next, Jim heard a voice in his head. The being was speaking to him through telepathy and was moderately interested in Darla's presence.
Is that your wife?
No, she's my cousin.
Leave her here. Tell her to lock the doors. You come with me.
Jim climbed from the car and followed the spaceman down the road toward the ship, which had landed nearby and which Jim could see now was pink in color.
The spaceman stopped just outside of his ship and was joined by another spaceman. They took Jim's watch and shoes, and incidentally, they referred to his shoes as moccasins, and said he'd get 'em back the next night.
So the next night, Jim picked Darla up and they headed back to the same place to see what the spaceman might steal from them next. But first, Jim thought it would be a good idea to drop by Woody's house and let him know what had happened.
And since Woody had had so much more experience with space people, he decided he'd better come along. After all, no spaceman that he encountered ever stole his watch or shoes.
The three drove to an area near where the spacecraft landed the night before. They climbed from the car and began to walk toward the area the ship had been parked. As they walked, Woody noticed 3 shadows in a nearby culvert.
At first, he was nervous, but then his mind phone rang. When Woody picked up, he was relieved to hear it was Indrid. Indrid was standing down in the culvert with Carl Ardo and another space guy, Demo Hassan. Indrid said the trio should continue on. We'll watch your backs.
If they were in the werewolf, they would call that a mind link.
Okay. I call it a mind phone.
I know, I love it as a mind phone. I'm just saying the where people call it a mind link. The spaceship from the night before was parked a short ways away on the other side of the road in a ravine. Oh. As Jim, Darla, and Woody approached, the men from the night before stepped out in front of the craft.
Woody's mind phone rang again, and Indrid instructed him to keep the pair's attention so that Carl and Demo could sneak up behind. Woody did his job and distracted the pair. Suddenly, Carl Ardo and Demo Hassan were there, up behind them, and were able to non-violently force these guys back into their craft. Indrid explained that the beings Jim and Darla had encountered were humanoids. They traveled around in their pink ships and robbed people. So let this serve as a reminder to you. If you see a pink ship, don't stop, and don't take off your shoes.
That is some good advice right there. Pink ship.
Humanoids, man.
Don't stop. Don't ever take off your shoes, right?
Nope.
All right, so let's legit or bullshit one last time and give our Yeti scores for today's episode. I'm going to say a 0 or a 1 and bullshit. Even though I love to believe in aliens.
Well, yeah. And we're not disputing whether or not aliens exist or have visited or, or that travel is possible. That's not what we're disputing. We are specifically disputing Woody's story and Indrid Cold. And I think that Woody's story, as he has told it, he is sincere. I do not think that this poor man is lying. I think that someone did a number on him. I don't know why or how or what all transpired, but I think Indrid Cold is bullshit. So my Yeti score is like you, a 0 with regard to whether or not this is something that happened.
Mm-hmm. Good episode.
All right.
Damn you, Indrid Cold.
So as always, we want to thank you all for listening. You make every episode worthwhile.
Absolutely. And reach out to us on Facebook, Instagram, or through email at jenandandy@ichabodshouse.com. And remember, we're available for streaming on YouTube now as well. Wherever you're at, you can just hit the subscribe button and leave us a 5-star review, and that would help us get the word out about our podcast. We'd really appreciate it.
Absolutely. We appreciate you all so much, and thank you again. Until next time, remember Ichabod loves you.
Carry a flashlight and always bring extra pants.